Okay, hello everybody. This is Sophie from English Australia. Just before we get started, I'd like to make sure that everybody can hear me and also see the slide on the screen that says personal brand. If you can, then can you please type in yes? Okay, wonderful. I'm getting yeses coming through. Let's get started. Thanks to everybody for attending today's Women in Leadership Professional Development session about personal brand. Today's presenter is Georgiana Toma, and Georgie works as the Business Development Manager at the Centre for English Teaching, CET, at the University of Sydney, where she devises recruitment and marketing strategies for the centre. We're very lucky to have Georgie with us here today. She's somewhat of an expert on the topic of personal brand. Last year, she completed her PhD research in the area. Her PhD presented strategies to construct a personal brand. And so we're very interested to hear what you have to say today, Georgie. I'll hand over to you now.
Thank you, Sophie. And thanks everyone for tuning in. I'll start off by telling you a little bit about myself. And so Sophie has already covered it. Last year, I just completed a PhD, and the title of my thesis was I Exploit My Children for Millions and Millions of Dollars on My Mommy Blog, How Heather B. Armstrong's Personal Blog Became a Successful Business. So what my thesis looked at was narrative strategies to construct a personal brand in the context of co-created online forums, so blogs basically, and then with an emphasis on attaining authenticity, followership, and audience loyalty. So what I'd like to do today with you is share some of the frameworks, some of the literature on personal branding and some of the frameworks presented in this literature, and kind of start a dialogue with you on how we can apply those frameworks to our daily context, in particular if we are in a leadership role or a management role. And along the way, I'll share with you some of my own, I guess, lessons that I've learned, and perhaps some of the questions that I still have about all of this. So let's get started by looking at some of the aims for this webinar. So what I'm hoping to help you with is I'm hoping to help you gain an understanding of what a personal brand is, to become familiar with the brand personality dimensions, to start a conversation around concepts related to attachment theory, authenticity, and consistency in the context of personal branding, and lastly, to look at how we can embed personal branding practices in our daily work routines. So for this purpose, we have 6 parts to this webinar, and we're going to start off with a task. So get ready, and let's see, task number 1 is a question. So can I ask you to please think of a colleague, past or present, you would go the extra mile for. So this is a colleague, it's not your manager. My question is, what is it about them that makes you go the extra mile for them? So what I mean by going the extra mile is giving them special access to you when, for example, you are very stressed. So let me give you my example. There are days when I am so busy with urgent deadlines and meetings that I have to prepare for that I just ignore new emails. Now, however, when this person writes to me, I do open her emails. And if she needs something urgent, I will make time for her. So my answer is, what is it about this person that makes you do that? And I can share with you my answer. In my case, this is a colleague that I have a lot of respect for and that I care about a lot. I really like her, and I like her because she's honest, because she's dedicated to her work, and because she's unassuming. And I also know that she knows how busy I am, and that she would never say something is urgent unless it really is. So there you go. Can I ask you now to please type your answers in the chat box, and Sophie will read them out for us. Also, please note that this is anonymous, so we won't see what you said, basically. I'm just going to give you some time to start typing your answers. And Sophie, whenever you get some answers, if you can read them out to us, that'd be great.
All right. She has integrity and is dedicated. She is totally committed to the organization. This colleague is a professional staff member and he always drops everything to help me, so I would reciprocate. She always helps me when I need a colleague and help, and she does what she says she's going to do. I have great respect for this colleague. She always gives me great advice and listens to me. This person is someone who demonstrates professionalism and always helps anyone else. Okay, the comments have stopped coming through. There's one last one. She's direct and honest.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I won't be discussing them right now. I'll be referring back to your examples as we go along through the webinar. So what I'd like to do now is to look at task number 2. And again, a question for you. This time, I'd like you to think of a public figure. Sorry, I'm just trying to click next. There we go. Think of a public figure that inspired you to do something. And my question is, what was it about them or their message that led you to action? So I'm going to give you an example. Susan Cain is a person who inspired me to action. And so I recently read her book called Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Won't Stop Talking. And I have to say it's a book that kind of changed my life. And she inspired me to take one concrete action, and that is to schedule moments of solitude in my workday to help maintain my inner balance. And so what I do is these breaks can be from 5 to 15 minutes, but no longer. I go downstairs and there's a park next to our building, and sometimes when I have only 5 minutes, I just simply stand in the middle of it and feel the wind on my skin. And all I need is a minute or two or just quiet. Now, my answer is why. Why did I get to put into practice something that I read? And the thing is that one of the things that I like about this book and about its message is that it's very well researched. So Susan Cain in this book presents a variety of arguments and a variety of sources that are reputable academic sources. So I believe that the arguments she's presenting are supported by research. Also, her examples are very well constructed and compelling. And the truth is some of her examples resonate a lot with my experience. Okay, so that's my answer. Off to you now.
Okay, we have a couple of answers in.
Mm-hmm.
Someone said, William Ury, always look for the third side.
Mm-hmm.
Another person has said Emma Thompson, first because I'm in love with her, second because I was inspired by a recent article on her activism.
Okay. And you don't even have to tell us who they are, but exactly what was it about them that actually made you take that action?
Someone has said they had a clear, simple message that fitted my situation.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's excellent. And look, if you think, if you've got ideas that they're gonna pop into your mind as we go along, feel free to just type them in, and Sophie is gonna relay them back to us.
Okay, there's a
Um,
couple more I can quickly relay.
okay.
Someone said it's hard to think of a specific example, but I'm inspired by people who live their words.
Mm,
And another
yes.
person has spoken about the person that they have in mind, and they said because what he said made so much sense, retrospectively obvious but enlightening, and it reminded me to consider more than binary options.
Mm,
Okay. Inspired by
yeah.
courage is another comment.
Yeah. Oh, this is excellent. Thank you so much for sharing. And I just have one more task for you, one more question. And this relates to, oh, let's go back. This relates to a manager that inspired you to work harder than you had to. So what was it about this person that made you want to work harder? And again, I'm going to share with you a personal example. Back when I was in Romania, I was working with my manager on a grant proposal for European Union funds. Now, these grant proposals are horrible, horrible things to write. And so we were working on it for about a month. And all throughout this month, I was working full time. I had a full time teaching load, and so all of the work was extra. But the last week was particularly horrible because we ended up working every single day until midnight, and one night it was until 2 a.m. So I could have chosen not to work that many long hours. That was definitely a possibility that wouldn't have had any negative repercussions on my career. I could have chosen to work less, extra hours. Also, it wasn't for the money because she could only afford to pay me very little. So, and I never asked for more. And now, what was it? What was it about this person that made me want to work harder? Um, and I can tell you this person, even to this day, is someone that is an absolute role model for me. And what I admire about her is that she is a wise human being. So she is someone who is has high standards in her work, but is also very supportive of her team. And this is someone who always went out of her way to find professional development opportunities for us. And that in Romania at that time, or even now for that matter, is really rare. So that to me demonstrated how much she cared about us. So yeah, that's my answer, and now off to you.
Okay, I have some answers. This manager was so hands-on and so open to test and try new ideas that it was exciting to stay and work hard to make things happen and then celebrate together. That was such an inspiration. Today, they are the global brand manager. Someone else has said, a wise, courageous manager who cares and gives us support and opportunities. Someone else, my very best manager was wise, intelligent, dedicated, and hardworking. She asked me for my ideas and made me feel valued and appreciated. He's very supportive and helpful. Someone else has said team bonding was important to this person.
Excellent.
The last one, believed in my potential and gave me opportunities.
Oh, this is excellent. Thank you so much for sharing. I was just writing down all of your answers actually, because it's gold. It looks like I paid you all to do to say the right things. So what I'd like to do now is to get right down to it. We're going to go through a series of theoretical frameworks, and as we discuss them, I'm going to be referring back to your examples. So let's get started by just clearly defining what it is we mean by personal brand. I'm going to try to click next. Success. Now, the concept of personal brand was actually introduced in 1997, and it was introduced in a magazine called Fast Company by a guy called Tom Peters. Tom Peters published an article that was called The Brand Called You. And basically, his claim was that becoming a brand is about differentiating yourself from others in your category through your unique value proposition. And I'm just gonna share with you his own words, and his words are these: anyone can have a website, and today, because anyone can, anyone does. So how do you know which sites are worth visiting, which sites to bookmark, which sites are worth going to more than once? The answer: branding. The sites you go back to are the sites you trust. They're the sites where the brand name tells you what the visit will be worth, whether the visit will be worth your time again and again. The brand is a promise of the value you will receive. And he goes on to say actually something quite interesting about email, and I'm just going to read it to you. He says the same holds true for that other killer app of the net. Remember that this is 1997, and at the time, email was still considered a killer app. Anyway, so he says, when everybody has email and anybody can send you email, how do you decide whose messages you're going to read and respond to first, and whose you're going to send to the trash unread? This is so true today, isn't it? So the answer is personal branding. The name of the email sender is every bit as important as the brand as the name of the website you visit. It's a promise of the value you'll receive for the time you spend reading the message. So again, what Peters was focusing on was the idea that the brand is a promise of value. Now, I know that this concept of personal branding has a lot of, let's say, skeptics. But what I'd like to propose to you today in this webinar is let's try not to think of personal branding as some kind of neoliberal individualism taken to potentially clinical standards of narcissism. It's something else. It's something more. So what I'd like to present to you is some theories from branding literature that talk to us about a personal brand as the synthesis of all the expectations, images, and perceptions that it creates in the minds of others when they see or hear your name. One particular definition of personal brands that I like is that personal branding is a rhetorical way in which one attempts to control the way the public perceives you. Now, the reason why I like this definition is because of the word rhetorical, because this word connects us to the idea of narrative. And when narrative comes into play, we're thinking about a story. So the way I look at personal branding is becoming the author of your story. To me, personal branding is about living your life mindfully, being reflective about the way you choose to live and the person you choose to be. And I'm going to talk about this and briefly touch on three main points on the idea of personality and how you can choose what your perceived personality and quality, the qualities that you want to show to the world are. I'm going to talk about attachment, authenticity, and consistency. So let's get started by looking at brand personality. Now, by perceived personality, just wanted to mention something regarding the previous slide. By perceived personality, I mean, and obviously the way people perceive you, what they say about you once you leave the room. Now, human brand literature suggests that perceived personality is perhaps the key factor in achieving appeal and visibility. And it represents truly your unique value proposition. Now, there's a lot of research around this because it is clearly quite interesting and it's quite important. Now, what I found, one of the most interesting frameworks was developed in 1997 by social psychologist and marketing professor Jennifer Acker. And what she did, she was very curious to see how is it that certain people become stars, become celebrities. So a lot of her research looked into what personality features are linked to attaining stardom. Now, in her initial study, Acker did look only at celebrities. However, there's a lot of branding research that's been happening since then that has looked at common individuals who attain stardom through social media platforms. And that's how I came across her in my study for blogs. Now, the framework that she outlines tells us certain character traits that are likely to engender attachment to a human brand. And these traits are sophistication, competence, sincerity, excitement, and ruggedness. Now, I know that the purpose of this webinar is not to discuss how you can all become the next Paris Hilton. I know that. However, we are going to look at what these characteristics are, and then we're going to discuss how we can implement them in our day-to-day, let's say, story. So let's start off by talking about sophistication. Sophistication in marketing literature, in branding literature, is related not only to the perception of the individual as glamorous or incredibly charming or incredibly beautiful. It is to an extent, so physical attractiveness does play a part, charm does play a part. But equally important is having a person that exhibits positive personality traits, such as friendliness, such as general likability. And I think we can all agree that if you think of your colleagues, you will think that the people you are likely to be attracted to or to help more are people that you like as human beings, that because they're friendly or because they're perhaps charming. The second one is competence. Competence as a personality trait encompasses the public's perception of the celebrity or the individual as intelligent, reliable, and successful. Now, let's look back at some of your examples. And some of you, especially when we were talking about your manager, said, oh, this person was wise, This person was wise and intelligent. This person was hardworking. And someone said about their colleague, she does what she says she's going to do. So we see here how some of these traits are present in our appraisals of the people that we would tend to go the extra mile for. The next feature we're going to talk about is sincerity. Now, obviously, sincerity is linked to the perception of an individual as being honest, as being down to earth. And I think it goes without saying that this is a crucial personality trait. And I'm not going to go into details because this, I believe, to most of us is quite a core. It's quite a core value. Excitement is our fourth personality trait, and excitement is related to the idea of intense energy, intense activity, entertainment, or fascination. Oh, I really like one of you when you talked about your manager, you said, oh, this person was open to new ideas and we were trying things and it was exciting. You actually used the word, it was exciting to try out new things and celebrate together. And I think you can all remember having met at some point someone who just sends off this incredible energy, and it's fun to work with them, and you always feel like, yes, we're doing something together. Now, the fifth one is ruggedness. Now, ruggedness is used in branding literature as an indicator of strength and resilience. Now, interestingly, Acker's later studies disproved the validity of this dimension because it appeared not to be consistent across cultures. That's quite interesting. But I decided to keep it in because I just think that ruggedness is valued in this culture, at least in my opinion, and feel free to disagree. I do think that in this culture, ruggedness is kind of connected to having had life experience and to having had some kind of having overcome some kind of hardship that is likely to make an individual more able to empathize with other people's struggles. And anyway, resilience is the new buzzword when it comes to educating our children or when it comes to developing resilience in the workplace. I think it's very much something that it's present there. Branding literature, however, what they do is they replace ruggedness with another dimension called rudeness. Now, what they mean by rudeness is verbal and nonverbal behavior that's insensitive, that contravenes social norms, and that displays a general lack of regard for others and a lack of empathy. Now, rudeness has been shown across cultures to negatively impact human brand appeal. Now, this is particularly relevant for our discussion because I think oftentimes our workplaces are very intense. We work under a lot of pressure. And that means that sometimes when someone comes to you and interrupts you, you might be tempted to offer a curt reply, let's say. And perhaps this can be misinterpreted as being rude or insensitive. So it is important to remember that this particular feature has very strong correlation to a decrease in followership and in loyalty. Okay, so we've looked at the brand personality dimensions, and now what we're going to do is discuss the concept of attachment and its implication for building a personal brand. Now, in psychology, attachment is defined as the experience of long-term psychological connectedness to another individual. Marketing literature adopts this term because it's gold for marketing literature. I mean, we all remember that if you are attached to a brand, you are likely to buy that brand, even if, let's say, there's controversy surrounding that brand, or maybe you bought one particular product that wasn't as good as all the others, you would still continue to buy it if you are somehow attached to it. So, branding literature defines attachment as the intensity of an individual's emotional bond with a human brand. Okay, so what are the implications of attachment, and how do we get people to become attached to us? That's just a joke, but anyway, how is attachment formed? Now, the question is very, very important because attachment is directly linked to trust. And I think we all know that when we worked in a group with people that trusted us, they were much more likely to help us. And that getting that buy-in from anyone you work with is invaluable. So let's look at what are the mechanisms through which people become attached. Now, I'd like to talk to you about a framework developed by Matthew Thompson. Matthew Thompson is a marketing theorist, and back in 2006, he was actually one of the first people to look at how attachment is formed, and to actually investigate it and transpose some of the psychology research going on at the time to marketing. And basically, his contention was that attachment is formed when the basic human needs of autonomy, competence, and relatedness are satisfied. So, what did he do? He developed a framework, of course. We love frameworks. So his framework is called ARC, Autonomy, Relatedness, Competence. So what does it mean? I'll just go through them one by one. Autonomy. In marketing, autonomy refers to consumers' need to experience a sense of self-determination and agency with respect to their choices, their modes of expression, or behavior. So human brands that facilitate this experience are more likely to engender stronger attachment in their audience. So what does that mean in practice for us at work? To me, in my opinion, I extrapolate this idea of autonomy to leadership and contend that if people experience autonomy in their workplace, they're more likely to be productive and loyal. And I'd like you to think about this. Remember a time where you worked in a team with a manager that made you feel involved in decision making, that made you feel like your mode of expression is accepted, that treated you with respect and made you feel that you have agency and ownership over your work. Weren't you more likely to produce more? And again, I'm going to read here from your examples with your manager. You said, made me feel, it was asked me for ideas. They believed in me and gave me opportunities. They saw my potential. Then you use the word support and opportunities several times. Okay, that's autonomy. Sorry, I'm kind of rushing through it because I want to go through it all, and I would like us to have some question time at the end. Now, relatedness, the second component. In marketing literature, relatedness refers to the basic human need to experience closeness to others and a sense of belonging to a group. Okay, now taking it back to our context, think about the times when you actually felt that you were part of a team. And again, I'm going to read from your examples. There's someone that told us that for their managers, team bonding was important, that their managers were supportive. And I think someone was talking about their colleagues, and they said they always help me. They're always there for me. So I think it goes without saying that people who work in a team where they feel other people, including their manager, truly care about them, are more likely to be productive, and they're more likely to want to go the extra mile. The third component in the ARC model is competence. Now, in marketing, competence refers to an individual's inherent need to experience recognition of skills, achievements, and effectiveness. Now, interestingly, Thompson, in his research, he concluded that competence is not a direct predictor of attachment strength, but degradation of consumer competence has an extremely negative effect on brand attachment. So what does that mean? Basically, is this: if someone in your team feels that their skills are recognized, that their achievements are recognized, great. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be more attached. However, if someone in your team perceives that their skills are not fully utilized or recognized, that their achievements are not praised, then it is highly likely they will become demotivated and they will not be as productive as they could be, right? Now, a lot of the things that I'm talking about here are not new by any means. However, what I like about these two ideas of having frameworks is the fact that you are reminded of this. You can be reminded of this. And you can embark, in a way, on a journey that would help you create that brand identity in a way that resonates with your core values, and also in a way that takes into account these principles that actually ultimately make you a better human being, because really that's what it is about. Now, I'd like to, following on from that, because I keep on talking about stuff that resonates with your core values, right? And so clearly, it is important to discuss notions of authenticity and consistency. Authenticity in particular, because if someone doesn't believe you're being authentic, then you can have the best constructed narrative ever, but you're not going to get buy-in from anyone. A lot of times we believe that authenticity is this innate thing. But I would just like to question that notion just a little bit, and I'd like to present to you some definitions of authenticity from marketing literature. And so what brand literature tells us is that brand authenticity is actually a rationally constructed characteristic supporting an individual's subjective perception. And actually, so what does that mean? That means that we are talking about the perception of authenticity. So whenever perception is used, subjectivity is there. That also opens the space for, in a way, orchestrating that perception. And that's what a lot of brands do. And it's quite interesting because the more you read this research, the more you look at the world through more and more critical eyes, and you see actually what is at play when a brand constructs their image. And there's been a lot of research into how can we build an image that resonates authentic with our consumers. And most of this research concludes there are three main features that do that. And one is quality commitment, the second is softening commercial motives, and the third one is stylistic consistency. So basically brands that have a way of telling us, yes, we are committed to giving you the best product, that they soften the commercial motives. And I've recently seen this ad for pet food, and it was all about how it's a business, it's a family business, and we love dogs, and look at our farm, and all of that story is there. And the third one, stylistic consistency, is quite important because that means over time and across media channels, a particular brand shows the same image with the same values. Okay, so that's branding. Yes, that's branding marketing literature. How does that apply to our context? And here is how it applies. These all are my ideas. So if if there's something that, is not clear or that you disagree with or that you want to ask more, please start typing in your questions. So then when we get to the Q&A part, Sophie will be ready to just read them out. Okay, so we talked about quality commitment, right, as being one of the things that would ensure brand authenticity. Now, in my opinion, when we translate it to our work context, quality commitment means having an individual who's committed to produce high quality work, who has a solid work ethic. And then I'm looking at your examples, and when you talk about your manager, someone actually said the word is a hardworking manager, right? And also when you talked about your colleagues, they said it gives great advice, demonstrates professionalism. So is totally committed to the organization. So again, I don't think I need to give more examples on that one. But what I would like to discuss is the notion of, so for brands, we have the notion of stylistic consistency. But for us, I just like to focus on just the idea of consistency. And to me, that has two main parts. The first part is that words are congruent with actions and vice versa. And to use one of your words, I think someone said this when you were talking about your colleagues. Yeah, there you go. She does what she says she's going to do. And then someone said about the public figure, people who live their words. And I think that's beautiful, and that encompasses this idea exactly. The second thing that I think it's important when it comes to consistency, and it's obviously related to the first point, is that personality traits and behaviors are stable over time and consistent across different contexts. So what do I mean by that? Let's say you're trying to show your team that you are an empathetic manager and that you care about them. So you do that when you are relaxed. But let's say times get hard and you are extremely stressed, and a member of your team is clearly upset about something. They might be sick or they might have a problem. Now, in this time of stress, you find that you simply do not have the resources to show any kind of empathy or to even stop and talk to that person. Now, obviously, this is inconsistent behavior. And so chances are people, your team, will not really believe in the authenticity of your claim to be an empathetic manager or to care. And this is, of course, this is a general example, but it's just to give an idea of what I mean. In my opinion, consistency is truly the key to perceive authenticity. And this is assessed and reassessed over time. So being who you claim to be over time, that's pretty much the key. What I'd like to share with you now as a way, I guess, of concluding the webinar are some lessons, I guess, that I've learned along the line, and particularly doing this research, which has helped me kind of put the words behind the lessons that I kind of knew intuitively. I think the first lesson was being mindful of the personality traits and behavior that you exhibit in the workplace, especially when working under pressure or when feeling insecure. Because I think these two scenarios are where managers are most likely to exhibit personality traits, or colleagues for that matter, or whoever is more likely to exhibit personality traits that aren't that great. The other lesson is that you can choose the leader you want to be deliberately, and that you should do so. And I guess this comes back to my core belief that people can change, but only if they make a deliberate, conscious choice to do so. Because change involves a lot of self-reflection, involves seeing and identifying the areas where you want to improve, and involves the diligence and consistency of working at it over and over and over again. The third one would be acting with integrity and again, the word that comes up again is consistency. Acting with integrity refers to speaking from your core values. And I've gone through personality traits here, right, and the ARC model. Now, clearly, some of those things will resonate with you more than others. Some of those things you're already doing. And I think personal branding is about making a conscious decision about which of those resonate with you, which of those or other personality features you would like to exhibit because you would like to be a better leader and ultimately a better human being, and then going at it by implementing it consistently. And I guess the last one is about being honest and compassionate about the precarious nature of any human endeavor. And I guess here I'm going to be honest with you in the spirit of honesty. Like, for me, honesty is, let's say, a feature that comes easily. I've always been quite direct, to the point of being too direct, and quite open about the challenges that I feel. However, compassion hasn't always come easily to me. And for one reason or another, the experiences that we have in life mark us. They leave an imprint and determine the way we are in the world. And I guess that's the nature of life. But I believe the only agency we have truly in this life is to choose how you react to that. And so I guess that's where the concept of personal branding comes into me, is you choose the story you want to tell, and the only character you control in this story is yourself, right? And so what are the personality traits of this character? What behaviors is this character going to demonstrate in the face of adversity? It's a matter of making a choice, and then equally important is implementing that choice on a regular basis. So I'm getting with this one, and kind of like the last point that I kind of wanted to mention is how do you do it, particularly when you have these crazy busy days that you're run off your feet. How do you then implement this great change program into the best leader you could be? So I'll get to the last part, which is actually the practice of personal branding. And to talk about this, of course, I'm going to present a framework, because I absolutely love frameworks. I think the reason why I love them, besides being a total nerd, is the fact that what frameworks do is they offer you a concrete idea of something small that you can implement in your day-to-day life. Now, I believe from practice that true change comes from small changes that you consistently put into practice. Over time, these changes become habits, and that's when a fundamental change in your personality happens. So, for example, in my case, I remind myself on a daily basis to be compassionate, and I remind myself that it's okay to accept that failure and frailty is part of human nature. Now, getting back to this concept, right? So the framework is actually developed by this guy called Douglas Conant. Doug is the CEO of Campbell Soup. Now, we all know Campbell Soup. So in 2001, Campbell Soup was a company whose stock was falling precipitously. Their core business was in disrepair, total mess. People were disengaged. They were about to go bankrupt. So Doug, 2001, becomes the CEO of Campbell Soup, and his mission is to save the company. Now, not an easy task. And yet, what happens? In 8 years, Doug managed to rebuild this company to be one of the most successful company in their industry. So how did he do that? He did that by implementing something that he came to call touch points. Now, what are touch points? These are sequences of interactions that happen between people. So a touch point is basically anytime you meet someone and you work with them on something work-related. Now, let me further develop them because that sounds weird, doesn't it? What we know through our experience of a workplace is that, particularly as manager, you constantly have to meet or exceed your targets. You have to be prepared to make decisions on the spot, sometimes without having all the information. You also have to mobilize your team to follow you. There's never enough time, right? There's always a student issue, there's a client issue, there's a vendor issue, something goes wrong with the system. So what happens is that you sit at your desk. More often than not, the maximum time you can go uninterrupted is 10 minutes. And then someone comes and taps your shoulder. The phone rings. So you are taken away, you are distracted, you need to do something. So how can anyone manage to do anything under these circumstances? Now, the concept that Doug was trying to the idea that Doug is trying to push through the concept of touch points is that these interruptions are actually the main role of a leader. So these interruptions are not necessarily interruptions, but rather a latent leadership moment. So this means what? That when someone comes to you to ask something, that is an opportunity for you to what? To inspire them, to help them, to give them a sense of direction, to instill some energy, or to simply just help out your team members. And this is very important because I don't know about you, but for me, definitely one of the hardest things that I've had to learn to cope with was being constantly interrupted and asked to go into meetings or asked for things that sometimes I thought were either less urgent than they were presented to be, or less relevant than they were presented to be. And particularly being an introvert, I found it even harder to cope with that kind of hyper-stimulated environment. So what Doug's framework helped me understand and do was actually change my mindset and approach each day and each interruption as an opportunity. So that meant something actually quite fundamental. It meant in going to work with this idea that you will be interrupted, you will not get to do everything, and that is okay, because you have the skill to answer all of those questions meaningfully, and you have the energy and patience to do so. I highly recommend reading the book. We're running out of time. We have 4 minutes left. So what I'd like to do is end right now, and I would like to just offer some points for reflection. Homework, of course, homework, because I'm a teacher at heart, and there's no session without homework. And what I'd like to share with you are some questions, and perhaps it would be a good idea, if you feel like it, to do a writing exercise this weekend and just start answering some of these questions. I find writing being quite conducive to self-reflection. So what I'd like to ask you is, which of the personality features mentioned do you exhibit on a regular basis? Which of the personality features does not come naturally to you? Do you offer your team opportunities to experience autonomy, relatedness, and competence? When, how, and how often? And is that enough? What changes in your facial expression, tone of voice, body language when you are interrupted in the middle of an important task? Then a different question related to that is, how do you react when a team member interrupts you to convey information you deem unnecessary or irrelevant? The number 6, which of the concepts mentioned in this webinar resonate with your core values? And number 7, why did you really tune into this webinar? And what were you hoping to get out of it? All right, so 2 minutes. Quick questions. If we have any, maybe there's none, so I can just go on talking. I don't know.
So if you have any questions, you can type them in, and they can also be comments. They don't need to be questions. Okay. The first question, or the first comment, that was excellent. Thank you, Georgie. Such pertinent reminders of why we are leaders and how we should act.
Oh, thank you.
I think I have a comment as well, which is that your personal examples and also this theory is quite liberating in a way, to know that you can choose the leader that you want to be deliberately, and then practice being that person, and sort of become those things, even if they're not innate qualities that you may possess. And I think that's quite a liberating thought.
Yeah, thank you. It's
Someone
it's it's
else,
also a hard thing to do.
sorry, someone else agrees. I think they've said, choose the leader you want to be. Love this.
Yeah, it's not an easy process, um, but I think it's worthwhile because if you, I don't know if you've got the chance to experience this, but I have, and it's amazing when you are at a table with a team that experiences all of these things, that experience the autonomy, relatedness, competence, that feels good, cares about each other, and they work well to accomplish something is just amazing. It's just you go to work and you feel the energy and you feel, yes, I'm happy to wake up and we have a purpose together. Even though we're not saving lives, we are motivated by our work. And that starts with you as a leader because you can instill this in your team. And so it's worth it. It's not easy, but it's worth it, I think.
Someone else has said that they love the idea of changing their mindset about interruptions.
Yeah, that's a hard one, I have to say. I still um, I'm working on that one.
It's a fantastic concept. All right, well, it's time to finish. So I don't think there are any other questions. I'd just like to thank you, Georgie, for today's presentation on behalf of English Australia. It's a real opportunity for us to be able to hear about your personal experiences and also tap into a bit of the knowledge that you gained during your PhD. And yeah, hopefully this conversation can continue among leaders.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sophie, for this opportunity. And
There's
thank you,
a
everyone,
Yeah,
for
that's okay.
listening.
There's a comment from someone in the audience. Thanks so much for the presentation. Lots to take away, but especially love the idea of choosing the leader you want to be. Thanks, Georgie. It's
Thank
also
you so
good to be
much.
aware there's no perfect leader, understanding your shortcomings and striving to be a great leader.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Someone else has said thank you for the chance to reflect on the type of leader I want to be.
Mm.
Hmm.
Others,
Okay, and
thank you.
yeah, the homework. Don't forget, everybody. I love the idea of homework.
Always.
Okay, so thanks again, Georgie, and thanks to everybody for coming to today's session.
Thank you.